Have you ever felt a moment slip out of your hands because your mind reacted before you did? One surge of emotion, one careless thought, and the whole day tilts off balance. I've watched people with brilliant minds crumble under impulse, while the quiet ones glide through storms untouched. The difference isn't luck, it's training. If you're ready to sharpen that inner blade, stay with me. Have you ever stood in a room full of people and felt as if most were moving through life on instinct, quick on the surface yet hollow underneath, chasing small victories that vanish the moment they arrive? Their lives resemble a noisy game of checkers, pieces sliding frantically across the board, reacting, never anticipating. But every now and then you notice someone different. Their gaze settles, not darts. Their steps slow, not stall. They are playing a deeper game, a quieter one, a game of chess. As we step into this idea, imagine watching the same world but through wiser eyes, seeing not chaos but patterns waiting to be read. Strategic intelligence is nothing mystical. It is simply the art of seeing farther than impulse allows. Just as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that life is shaped not by events, but by the judgments we bring to them. When most people rush to paint over a crack in the wall, the Stoic mind studies the foundation beneath it. When others panic at a drop in sales, the Stoic steps back and reads the unseen currents beneath the ripple. He sees the hive, not just the bee. Let's move deeper, carrying that same calm forward. Most live chained to the urgency of today, grasping for immediate rewards as if tomorrow does not exist. But the Stoic widens the horizon. He plants forests, not gardens. Seneca wrote that life is long if we know how to use it, and those who look beyond the moment wield time like a tool instead of a threat. While crowds tremble at each twist of fortune, the strategist aligns himself with probability rather than certainty. He does not demand perfect predictions. He positions himself where the winds tend to blow. Wisdom is not prophecy. It is preparation. From here, notice how leverage enters the picture. Not all actions weigh the same. Some are ash, some are hammers. The wise do not scatter effort everywhere. They search for the hinge that moves the door. They pause before acting because the right stroke once is worth 100 frantic ones later. Most people chase motion. The Stoic chases meaning. That is the difference between exhaustion and command. Advancing to the inner domain, imagine a watchman standing atop the walls of your mind. This is metacognition, though the ancients simply called it self-command. Most people mistake every emotion for truth, every impulse for instruction. The Stoic steps outside himself. He observes the rising anger, the tightening fear, the familiar urge to react, and asks, is this reason or simply noise? Epictetus taught that we suffer more from our opinions than from the events themselves. The watchman ensures those opinions do not rule like tyrants. Here's where flexibility and humility complete the circle. A mind that cannot bend breaks. A mind that clings to being right stagnates. The Stoic holds his beliefs firmly but lightly, willing to test them, challenge them, even abandon them if the truth demands. To change your mind is strength. To welcome contradiction is victory. Iron sharpens under pressure, not praise. And as we close, imagine waking one morning and realizing you have lived half your life asleep, guided not by thought but by habit. This is the greatest captivity, the self ruled by reflex. But the moment you pause, question, and choose deliberately, the chain cracks. The first breath of freedom arrives. This is the beginning of a sovereign mind, the mind that no storm, no insult, no chaos can command. As we step into this chapter, imagine walking through a long hall of mirrors, each reflection bending your face in ways you barely recognize. You think you're seeing yourself clearly, yet every angle distorts you. This is how the mind deceives us, not out of cruelty, but out of old wiring. It was built to protect you, not to reveal truth. In trying to keep you safe, it takes shortcuts that once saved your ancestors, but now quietly sabotage your clarity. Epictetus warned that what troubles us is not events, but the judgments we place upon them. But what happens when the judgment itself is warped? Here's where the first trick appears. Picture a sailor convinced he is sailing east, though every star and every wave says otherwise. He interprets every sign as confirmation of his chosen direction. That is how confirmation blinds the mind. We cling to what we want to believe and filter out the rest. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "If someone shows you a better view, accept it gladly." Humility is the cure, pride is the fog. Moving forward, imagine a village haunted by a single wolf attack. The story is retold by the fire until fear outweighs reality. Hunger, winter, sickness kill far more villagers, yet the mind fears the dramatic over the likely. The Stoic does not ask, "What do I remember?" but "What is real?" Advancing deeper, consider the weight of first impressions. One insult can stain someone for years while their kindness evaporates unnoticed. A single number in negotiation becomes a chain around your judgment. The first stone thrown into the river shapes every ripple. Only a deliberate mind loosens that anchor. At this stage, picture a craftsman beginning a great project thinking it will take days. He underestimates the hidden labor. Optimism without preparation breaks quickly. Seneca wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind, just as labor strengthens the body. Expecting hardship sharpens resilience. From here, pride takes another form. When we succeed, we praise our skill. When we fail, we blame fate or others. Epictetus warned that philosophy is not spoken, but lived. Ownership is liberation, excuses are chains. Now imagine the cruelest twist. We learn about these distortions and immediately assume we are above them. Yet, knowing a trap does not free you from stepping into it. Awareness must be paired with discipline. Systems must guard where confidence weakens. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to welcome correction, not resist it. And so, the remedy is structure. Question your assumptions. Test your beliefs. Slow your judgment. Use tools that force clarity, writing, reflection, deliberate reasoning. Above all, carry humility like armor. For the greatest deception is always the one within. From here, we step into the next realm, not only seeing clearly, but acting with precision. As we step into this chapter, imagine a craftsman entering his workshop at dawn, the cold light spilling over a table filled with gears and splintered beams, a mechanism so tangled that its confusion seems alive. Most people faced with such a mess would reach instinctively for the familiar. They would search memory for resemblance, asking themselves, "What does this remind me of?" And in that question, they would already be trapped. For when you cling to similarity, you inherit the same limits that confine those before you. It is like trying to patch cracks on a collapsing wall, instead of asking what kind of foundation should have been laid from the beginning. But pause here. Imagine the craftsman setting all assumptions aside, placing his palms on the wood, and asking instead, what is this at its core? What are the elements that cannot be reduced further? That quiet shift is the doorway to first principles, and that doorway is how creation begins. Moving into the heart of this way of thinking, picture the invisible walls that surround most of our lives. They are not stone, yet we treat them as immovable. They are chalk lines drawn by tradition, by habit, by the tired reasoning inherited from those who came before us. Education must look a certain way. Work must follow a certain path. Success must wear a certain shape. People accept these lines not because they are true, but because they are familiar. First principles thinking erases the chalk. It lets you step beyond borders that were never real. Marcus Aurelius himself challenged the rituals of emperors, reminding himself daily that virtue, not ceremony, is what builds a life. Seneca questioned wealth and comfort, breaking them into pieces until only their essential truths remained. They understood that most of what binds us is custom, not nature. Advancing to a clearer illustration, imagine the story of rockets. For decades, people believed rockets must be thrown away after each flight, as though disposability were carved into the laws of physics themselves. Engineers spent years shaving costs around the edges, but always within the assumption that rockets were single-use. Then someone stripped the idea to its bones. What is a rocket? Metal, fuel, energy, propulsion. The materials were not expensive enough to justify the astronomical cost. The cost came from the assumption itself. Erase that assumption, and the idea of reusability appears, not as genius, but as obvious. The breakthrough was not of steel, it was of thought. From here, let's step into the first movement of this practice, questioning assumptions. Many problems arrive hidden inside unwritten rules. Education requires classrooms. Health requires strict formulas. Careers must follow ladders already built. These are not laws of nature. They are habits. Ask why, and the illusion dissolves. Ask why, and what you feared as iron reveals itself as thread. Seneca wrote that freedom begins the moment you stop obeying the opinions of others. That is the essence of breaking assumptions open. Entering the next movement, picture a city drowning in traffic. By analogy, people demand more roads, more signals, more lanes. But break the problem apart, and you discover the truth. The issue is not cars, but inefficiency. It is space misused, time wasted, systems overlapping without harmony. See the problem in its raw form, and new solutions emerge. Shared systems, new routes, entirely different modes of movement. When you reduce a problem to its elements, it reveals its true shape. At this stage, reconstruction begins. Once assumptions have been stripped away and the structure reduced to essentials, you rebuild slowly, deliberately from the bedrock. This is how new worlds appear, not by polishing the old, but by building from truth. It is how mail rentals became streaming. How storefronts became global marketplaces, not through imitation, but through returning to fundamentals and asking, what is this really for? What do people actually seek? And what is the simplest way to deliver it? Now, imagine applying this to life itself. Most people build their path by analogy. They chase titles others praised, follow routes others walked, accept the definitions handed to them. But a Stoic asks deeper questions. What draws me? What problems do I feel compelled to solve? What strengths live at my core? From these roots, a new life can be built, one that did not exist before, yet fits you perfectly. You stop asking what is available and begin asking what is possible. Here's where courage enters. For this way of thinking invites resistance, not because you are wrong, but because you threaten the familiar. People cling to convention because it comforts them, not because it frees them, and your own mind will cling just as fiercely. Analogy is quick. First principles are demanding. They force you to walk without a map. Yet Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the path, that difficulty is the signal you are moving toward truth. Hard does not mean wrong. Hard often means important. From here, the reward becomes clear. Independence of thought. The kind no trend can sway, no crowd can drown, no storm can break. When convention collapses, the one who thinks from first principles still stands. He builds not from habit, but from truth, and truth endures. As we step into this chapter, picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast plain at dawn, the mist curled low across the earth like a living veil, hiding more than it reveals. To most eyes it looks like confusion, a blur of shifting shapes and meaningless shadows. But stay long enough, steady enough, and something changes. Patterns begin to emerge, the faint rhythm of hoofbeats behind the fog, the subtle bend of grass where a hidden wind cloaks its approach, the silhouette of movement long before the figure fully forms. In that moment, you understand what the Stoics meant when they said the world is not chaotic. Only our perception is untrained. Marcus Aurelius whispered to himself that everything is born of change, and nothing is more natural than the shifting of what seems still. To see those shifts early is to meet the future before it arrives. To miss them is to be surprised again and again by what was always there. Now imagine a river. At first glance it is only rushing water, wild and formless. But watch with patience, and you begin to notice the repeated bends, the eddies that always return, the rise and fall that comes with the turning of seasons. Soon you can anticipate where the water will swell and where it will thin. What seemed random becomes familiar. Life works the same way. There are patterns in relationships, markets, societies, even in your own moods and choices. The Stoic trains himself to see these currents because foresight is not prophecy, it is attention sharpened into wisdom. From here, the path moves into deliberate observation. Passive watching is blindness disguised as awareness. Seneca urged us never to drift through life, but to take daily stock of what we see and how we interpret it. That discipline is what turns memory into a library and a library into foresight. If you study human behavior, you begin to notice the rhythm of trust, how it builds slowly and breaks suddenly. If you study the world, you start to see cycles of confidence, fear, ambition, collapse. History becomes your companion here. What feels new is often only a new verse of an ancient song. Empires rise with pride and fall with excess. Economies swing like pendulums. Human passion repeats itself across centuries. To ignore these echoes is to walk blind among familiar traps. Advancing to subtler signals, consider the whispers that come before the wave. A tension in a conversation that predicts a fracture months later. A slight shift in markets that hints at a turning tide. A quiet invention dismissed as trivial that later reshapes entire industries. These are early indicators. Noise to most, but signs to the trained. The Stoic does not react to every flicker, nor ignore every tremor. He calibrates. He asks not only what has happened, but what is beginning. This is where scenario thinking strengthens the mind. You do not cling to one future, but sketch many, each plausible in its own way. You list the signals each path would produce. Then you watch. And when those signals appear, you recognize the unfolding pattern because you met it first in your own thought. The Stoics did this with adversity. They rehearsed misfortune before it arrived, so that when it came, they could greet it like an expected guest rather than an intruder. Now imagine stepping into a vast problem, one that feels immovable, like a mountain rising before you. Most people freeze because they see the mountain as a single mass. But what if you could see that it is not one thing, that it is made of stones, and those stones of smaller stones? Decomposition is this art, the breaking down of the overwhelming into the knowable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the pain is not in the thing, but in the estimate we place upon it. Break a problem into parts, and it shrinks. At this stage, structural decomposition shows its worth. A failing business is not one beast, but many. A weak market, a tired team, a flawed model. A personal struggle is not one storm, but a cluster of fears, habits, and unmet skills. When you see the parts, you see where to act first. Functional decomposition sharpens this further. Every challenge has inputs, processes, outputs. Each step can be refined, each gap understood. Temporal decomposition separates urgency from longevity, allowing you to treat each horizon with clarity instead of panic. Constraint-based decomposition reveals that some limits are laws, while others are merely beliefs dressed as laws. And when you identify the difference, some chains fall away instantly. Here's where the final insight settles in. What once looked like chaos now reveals itself as a collection of patterns, pressures, and parts. Patterns give you foresight. Decomposition gives you control. Together, they make you calm in storms that unravel others. They make you prepared where others are caught unaware. They give you the sovereign clarity the Stoics held so dearly, not the power to predict everything, but the ability to remain steady no matter what emerges from the mist. And as we close this reflection, remember this one truth. Mastery begins with seeing. To recognize patterns where others see confusion, to break down problems where others despair, that is the mark of a mind trained not by chance, but by discipline. If one word from this chapter stays with you, let it be this: pattern. It is your key to foresight, your shield against surprise, your compass in uncertainty. From here, we step into deeper waters, where anticipation becomes action and clarity becomes command. As we step into this chapter, imagine yourself in a crowded room where voices overlap, emotions flicker across faces, and tension moves like a quiet current beneath the noise. To most, it feels chaotic, but to someone who has trained their inner sight, every subtle cue becomes information. A clenched jaw, a softened gaze, a sudden pause. This is where the Stoic begins, not by rejecting emotion, but by reading it. Emotions are not your enemies, they are signals. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, yet emotion itself is data pointing toward truth, fear toward risk, joy toward alignment, frustration toward violated values. Now imagine a negotiation heated enough to blur judgment. Instinct pushes you to react fast, maybe too fast. But emotional regulation is the Stoic's shield. Regulation is not suppression. It is the space between event and response. One breath slows the storm. One step back creates clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind, not events, holds the real power. When you guard that space, you remain sovereign even in conflict. From here, awareness turns outward. A friend says they're fine, but their silence shakes at the edges. A colleague smiles, but their posture collapses. Groups cheer, yet tension hums beneath the applause. Words can deceive. Emotions rarely do. The Stoic learns to see beneath the surface, understanding that human behavior moves in emotional tides long before logic arrives. To ignore these currents is blindness. To read them is foresight. Advancing deeper, relationship management becomes not manipulation, but alignment. Trust is built through consistency, small promises kept, respect given especially when it's hardest. A leader who ignores emotion may gain compliance but never devotion. The Stoic earns both. At this stage, consider conflict. Most arguments escalate not because of facts, but because emotions go unrecognized. People fight to feel seen. Epictetus reminded us that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listening, true listening, disarms resistance. When emotion is acknowledged, truth finds room to grow. Now imagine turning inward again. Every intense feeling is a lesson waiting to be understood. Anger reveals boundaries. Fear reveals attachment. Sadness reveals meaning. These are classrooms, not punishments. If you reflect, pain becomes wisdom. If you don't, it repeats. Here's where intuition enters. Not impulse, intuition. The quiet sense that something is off or something is right. Refined intuition is pattern recognition beneath awareness. The Stoic tests it with reason, but does not ignore it. Finally, adaptability becomes the hallmark of emotional intelligence. The world shifts and rigidity breaks. Humility allows adjustment. Seneca said that without a clear destination, no wind is favorable. Adaptability is not weakness. It is survival with dignity. Emotional mastery is not about silencing the heart. It is about directing it. And from here, we step toward deeper clarity, where emotion, reason, and character move as one. As we step into this chapter, imagine yourself standing before others, not pressing, not forcing, but guiding with words chosen like a craftsman selects his tools. True influence is not domination, it is resonance. It invites rather than imposes. Epictetus reminded us that no one learns while believing they already know. Real persuasion lowers defenses instead of breaking through them. Now imagine reciprocity, that quiet current beneath every human bond. Think of a moment when someone offered you something small, yet meaningful, a gesture of kindness at the right moment. It stayed with you not because of its size, but because of its sincerity. Seneca wrote that wherever there is a human being, there is room for kindness. Genuine giving becomes influence without chains, because gratitude binds hearts more deeply than pressure ever could. Let's step into social proof. Picture yourself lost at a crossroads. Others walk confidently down one path, and instinct draws you to follow. This is ancient wiring, certainty in numbers. The Stoic strategist doesn't fight this instinct. He aligns with it. He shows that truth is shared, not solitary. People move when they feel they are moving with others, not against them. From here, commitment and consistency take hold. Ask someone a small question. Do you value integrity? And their yes quietly shapes their later actions. Identity seeks coherence. Epictetus taught, first decide what you will be, then act as you must. Influence works by awakening a person's own values, not overpowering them with yours. Now imagine framing, the same truth seen through 2 windows. One highlights gain, the other highlights loss. Both honest, yet the response changes. Framing is not manipulation, it is clarity. Seneca reminded us that life is not short, we make it so. A well-placed frame reveals urgency, purpose, and cost. Anchoring follows. The first idea introduced becomes the weight that shapes all that comes after. A Stoic uses this not to deceive, but to elevate, setting a standard that widens what others believe possible. At this stage, authority enters, not shouted, but lived. People trust competence paired with humility. Marcus Aurelius urged truth in both word and deed. Authentic authority persuades without insisting. Finally, scarcity and urgency. Not the false kind that manipulates, but the real kind that reminds us life is finite. Opportunities fade, time slips. The Stoics meditated on this truth to sharpen action, not to darken life. Influence, when practiced as philosophy, becomes alignment with nature, with reason, with virtue. From here we move forward toward a form of leadership built not on force, but on clarity, presence, and character. As we enter this stage, imagine the silence before two forces meet, not with weapons drawn, but across a table where every word matters. Strategic communication is not about speaking more, it is about speaking with intention. The Stoics treated words as tools, capable of healing, building, or cutting. When used carelessly, they trap you. When used wisely, they free you and those who listen. Now imagine standing across from someone whose fears and hopes you cannot see at first glance. Audience understanding is simply Stoic empathy sharpened into awareness. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to adapt to the people fate placed beside him. Who sits before you? What do they fear losing? What do they long to gain? Without this, words are arrows shot into darkness. Different hearts require different tones. One message cannot move all people. Moving deeper, imagine a craftsman shaping metal. Steel needs force. Silver needs patience. So too with communication. Some respond to logic. Others respond to vision. Others respond to trust above all. One approach cannot shape every mind. Here's where message structure becomes quiet power. The mind remembers beginnings and endings most. A Stoic communicator places truth up front, clarity at the end, and reasoning as the bridge. Seneca wrote that no one becomes wise by accident. The same is true for persuasion. Now imagine persuasion as fire. First comes tinder, the problem, then the spark, its cost. Only then comes the flame, the solution. This is not manipulation, it is clarity. People cannot seek remedy if they do not feel the wound. Let us step into storytelling. Humans don't think in lists, they think in journeys. A fact can be ignored. A story is lived. When your listener becomes the hero in that journey, your message becomes their mission. From here, picture negotiation. Many see it as combat, but most conflicts hide aligned interests. Epictetus said we are disturbed not by events but by our judgments. Change the frame, and the whole field changes. Preparation is your armor. To negotiate without it is blindness. Know their interests, know your limits, know your alternatives. A Stoic does not cling to one outcome. He prepares many paths. Finally, imagine difficult conversations. Emotions rise. Pride tightens. The Stoic begins with respect, speaks in I, not you, and attacks the problem, not the person. This preserves dignity and keeps dialogue alive. Strategic communication is not trickery. It is clarity shaped by empathy, speech anchored in truth, presence guided by discipline. Influence without integrity collapses. Influence built on virtue endures. And from here, we step forward toward a deeper mastery where words, silence, and intention become instruments of true leadership. As we step into this final chapter, imagine standing at a mountain's edge at dawn, the world silent beneath you while light slowly washes the sky. In your hands lies everything you've learned, books, lessons, scars, but knowledge without action is only smoke. It drifts, it comforts, but it changes nothing. This is the line the Stoics cared most about, the difference between knowing and living. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it, and this is where the real journey begins. Your old instincts once kept you safe, but today they hold you back. Strategy begins the moment you replace old reactions with deliberate thought. Seneca improved himself not through sudden transformation, but through steady refinement, one habit at a time. Moving into practice, real practice begins where comfort ends. The Stoics trained their mind the way the body trains under weight, slowly, steadily, deliberately. Start with small decisions where mistakes are safe, then slowly increase the pressure. Your mind, like steel, strengthens through heat. From here, the journal becomes your ally. Marcus Aurelius wrote to confront his own flaws, not to impress others. Recording your choices and reasoning reveals patterns, where you fall, where you grow, where you deceive yourself. The journal becomes a mirror. At this stage, imagine a heavy decision pressing on you. This is where Stoic triggers save you. What system is moving here? What time horizon matters? What bias clouds my view? Where is the smallest lever? These questions cut through panic and restore clarity. Mental rehearsal sharpens you further. Athletes visualize races. Warriors imagine battles. You can rehearse challenges too. When the moment comes, it feels familiar, not frightening. And now imagine explaining a principle to someone else. Teaching forces clarity. It exposes gaps. It binds you to live what you speak. Finally, protect your environment. Seneca warned the crowd can corrupt the unguarded. Surround yourself with people and conditions that sharpen you rather than dull you. Mastery arrives quietly when repetition turns into instinct. Knowledge becomes power only when lived. Begin now. Train daily. Adjust. Rise. Continue. Until wisdom becomes instinct and no storm can shake what you've built within. As we reach this moment of pause, imagine standing on a quiet ridge at dusk, the world stretched wide before you. Everything you have learned, every reflection you have held, now rests in your hands like a compass. The storms of life will return, as they always do, but the way you meet them no longer has to be the same. A trained mind does not tremble before uncertainty. It steadies itself, listens, and chooses its path with intention rather than impulse. That is the strength you have been shaping. Think back on the journey we walked through together. You learned to question old assumptions, to read patterns others overlook, to hold your emotions as signals instead of chains, to speak with clarity and to act with purpose, even under pressure. These are not tricks, they are foundations, and when practiced, they become the quiet armor you carry into every challenge. What you do with this understanding now determines everything. Knowledge transforms only when lived. If these ideas stirred something in you, if they reminded you of the person you are becoming, let this be the moment you choose to continue that growth. Feel free to subscribe if you want more guidance on this path of calm strength and clear thinking. Before you go, leave a single word in the comments, perhaps steady or aware. Let it be your anchor. And remember this, every step you take with a trained mind opens a wider horizon. Stay ready. The next lesson will take you even deeper.